Hi everyone, welcome to the first video in the series of Judith, the Queen of Chess. In the series, we're going to look at 10 to 12 games of Judith Polgar, considered to be the best of all time. So in case you don't know who Judith Polgar is, which is next to impossible if you're a proper follower of chess, then Judith is the name of a revolution in the male-dominated world of chess. In the long history of this game of legacy, we could hardly find any female chess player until a little Hungarian chess prodigy took a challenge to be world's number one. In 1988, prior to the tournament of 28th Chess Olympiad, the Polgar sisters did not get the permission to play against men in the team competitions. Edward Gufeld, the Soviet Grandmaster and the coach of Soviet women's team, dismissed Polgar sisters by saying that these girls are gonna lose their image and we shall know whether they're genius or just women. Well, the Hungarian women's team simply crushed the Soviet team, winning the tournament, and the credit goes to Judith, who achieved a score of 12.5 to half, winning a gold medal and a brilliancy prize at the same time. And let me remind you, she was only 12 at that time. Bobby Fischer once told that there is no woman in the world he wouldn't give knight or two and still win. Judith Polgar received the title of Grandmaster at the age of 15 years 4 months, becoming the youngest person to receive the title, breaking the record of Bobby Fischer. Garry Kasparov claimed that Judith has the potential to become women's world champion, but if she faces Kasparov, it is almost impossible for her to win. Suffice it to say that Judith Polgar defeated Garry Kasparov along with 11 world champions and many other top super grandmasters, including Karpov, Anand, Topalov, Kramnik, Carlsen, Shirov, and many more. She is the first woman, the first and the only woman chess player to cross the 2700 ELO rating. She was world's number 8 at the top of her career, and it is such an honor to analyze and learn from the games of this humble and so beautiful personality, yet a fierce attacker on the board of chess. If you love attacking chess, then follow her games. She always used to keep an eye on the king. So today in this video, we're going to analyze a game from a tournament organized in New Delhi, India. The game was played in 1990 against Alexander Chernin, the Soviet-born Hungarian chess grandmaster and world-renowned coach. Judith was 14, yet to become a grandmaster, but as they say, morning shows the day. It's an absolute pleasure to look at the on-point aggression and this amazing chess talent. So without further delay, let us dive into the game. Chernin is playing with the white pieces, Judith with the black pieces, and Chernin begins the game with c4, the English opening. Judith replies with g6 with the idea of enchanting the bishop on g7, and it looks like the opening is going to transpose to something else really soon. However, white continues with d4, taking control of the center, knight f6, preventing e4 by white, but simply knight c3, preparing to push e4. Bishop g7, fianchetting the bishop and also creating some room for the king to castle, and we are looking at king's Indian defense on board. A very aggressive opening for black here. Black is going to attack the king side, white is going to expand on queen side, so let's see what happens. However, white pushes e4, taking a huge control over the center as we have discussed earlier. Now black needs to strike the center, so black goes for d6. Activating the light square bishop, also preparing to push e5 or c5, striking the center here. White here plays h3, the Makagonov variation, and well, the idea is that white is preparing to push g4. But well, the main idea is that after black pushes e5, white or c5, white is gonna push d5 and activate his bishop by bringing it on e3. Okay, now look at this bishop. This bishop is gonna be a good bishop because the pawns are on opposite colored squares. So black will try to exchange this bishop for his knight by bringing this knight on g4. So this h3 move actually prevents this knight from coming on g4, harassing this bishop. So that is the main idea of Makagonov variation. However, black here first goes for castle, knight f3, activating the knight here, and finally e5, striking the center, d5 by white, as we have discussed earlier, knight a6, activating the knight, and bishop e3. Now this bishop is looking very strong. The game continues with knight h5, preparing to push f5, and also knight h2, preparing to push f4 here. However, here Judith goes for queen e8, activating the queen, and a very subtle yet very strong move. The idea is that after black pushes f5, captures, Black is gonna go for knight f4, so captures, and then this queen is gonna be very strong over this open e file. Bishop e2, activating the bishop, also preparing for castle here, and f5 finally. Black is going for striking the center. Into f5 and immediately knight f4, attacking the g2 square, and now it's kind of forced for white to trade off this bishop for the knight. So bishop captures knight into f4, and now look, this queen is looking very strong over the open e file as we have discussed earlier, and the game continues with f into g6, queen into g6, a better square for the queen. The queen is now attacking the g2 square, and now it is not possible for white to castle because bishop can take on h3, and now this g2 pawn is very vulnerable. It's a mating threat. So instead of castle, the kind of forced move is king f1, trying to defend the g2 square. However, the game continues with knight c5. Black is now bringing all her pieces on the king side, and rook c1. White is activating the rook here. Bishop f5, activating the bishop, also joining the two rooks. Now this bishop is looking very strong, putting pressure on this h3 pawn. However, the game continues with knight f3. The idea is that white is planning to bring the queen from f1 to g1 to h2, bring the rook on g1 and bring the bishop on f1, trying to defend the g2 square. And black is gonna follow the same pattern. She is gonna bring the bishop on f6, king on h8, then rook g8, rook g7, and then rook g8, doubling up the rooks. So that is the main idea here. So both the sides are following the same their individual plans here. However, bishop f6, king g1, king h8, king h2, rook g8 now, and rook g1 here, and queen h6, now putting a lot of pressure on this h3 square, and bishop f1, trying to defend the g2 square here. Rook g7, preparing to bring the other rook on the g file, doubling up the rooks, putting a lot of pressure on this g2 pawn. So b4 now, white is trying to expand on the queen side. Knight d7, black is trying to bring all her pieces on the king side. So bishop d3, trying to trade off some pieces, decreasing the tension on the king side. Now black has got a chance to attack the g2 square, and Judit immediately goes for rook into g2 check, rook into g2, and queen into h3 check cannot be an option because king g1, now king has an escape route. Instead, Judit here goes for the right move, bishop into h3. Now white cannot save his rook here because rook g1 cannot be an option, bishop f1 check, it's simply game over. The king has no square to go, so the only move is knight h4, and queen into h4 is checkmate. So white, it's not possible for white to save his king. Instead, white goes for knight e4, trying to bring the knight on the king side, but simply knight e5, bringing all her pieces on the king side. Now this knight is coming on g4, giving a check. So knight into e5, bishop into e5, and then white goes for knight g5 with the idea of knight f7, forking the king and the queen, picking up the queen here. However, it's too late for white to create any attack. Black here immediately goes for bishop into g2 check, king into g2, and queen into g5 check, king f3, and rook g8 with the idea of queen g4 checkmate. And well, let us understand the threat here. If white goes for something bad, let's say a3, so this is just to make you understand that what is the threat here. So the idea is black is gonna come on queen g4 check, king e4 is the only move, f3 check, king e3 is the only move, and queen f4, it's gonna be checkmate. So white here goes for king e2, trying to save the king, but simply f3 check, and it is in this position on move 29, Alexander Chernin resigns. Well, the resignation may be a little bit premature, but it's simply lost for white. What possibly he can do here? Suppose king into f3, then bishop d4 is coming, defending the e3 square, and it's gonna be checkmate with queen g4. So say suppose king e2, then rook e8, king f3, rook f8, king e2 and then rook into f3, rook into f2 check, king e1, and it's gonna be checkmate. Queen g1, bishop defends, and then queen into f1 is checkmate. If after rook e8 check, white tries to defend with king f1 say, then bishop into f2 is winning, queen g1 is coming to checkmate the king. So king into f2 is the only move. Queen e3 check, and whenever the king goes say f1, then rook f8 is coming, and wherever the king goes it's gonna be a checkmate. So queen h2 is checkmate. So suppose after f3 check, white tries to defend the king with king e1, then also rook e8 is it simply cannot, anything cannot be done by white here. The queen is coming on g1, so say bishop f1, then simply bishop c3 is checkmate. Queen f3, queen into f3, then queen into c1 check is coming. If queen is coming on d1, then bishop c3 check, king f1 is forced, queen captures queen check, and after king g2, rook g8 check, and wherever the king goes to h2 or to h3, it's a mate in 1, queen h5 is checkmate. Queen into f3, queen into c1 check, and say king e2 here, then bishop c3 check. So if queen tries to defend, then white is gonna lose the queen. If say bishop e4 trying to defend the check, then queen e1 check is coming. After king d3, queen d2 is checkmate. So the checkmate is coming from all the directions, so it's practically impossible for white to defend the position. So it is on move 29. In this position, Alexander Chernin resigns. Judit Polgar, at the age of 14, she wins this game, and with this we are coming to the end of the video, also end of the game. A very aggressive player is in making. However, I am taking your leave. See you next time with some other exciting game of Judit Polgar.